second. Hello, everybody. How are you doing? Welcome to the Yarn Thing podcast with Marley Bird. I'm your host, Marley Bird. You can catch the Yarn Thing podcast live most Tuesday mornings at 10 o'clock Mountain Time. That's 12 o'clock on the East Coast, 9 o'clock on the West Coast, and 11 o'clock in the Midwest. If you are anywhere else in the world and would like to join us live for the broadcast, please Google what time 10 o'clock Mountain Time is for you. I do live in Denver, Colorado, and come and join the fun. Or better yet, hit subscribe right here on the Marley Bird YouTube channel and make sure you hit that little bell and you'll get notified whenever I go live right here on YouTube. It's pretty easy stuff. I'm lucky to have some really great sponsors of this podcast, so let's say thank you to them now. They include Creative Bug, Craftsy.com, Stitches.events, Buffalo Wool Company, Erin Lane Bags, and last but certainly not least, Red Heart Yarns, where I'm the proud national spokesperson. You can learn more about my sponsors by visiting marleybird.com and click on the podcast menu where it says sponsors, and you'll find a direct link to each one of them. Go by, say hello, and thank them for sponsoring your favorite podcast. So I am thrilled to be on the podcast today. It's a day later. Obviously, this is not Tuesday. We are on Wednesday. And those of you who are catching this at a later date, it doesn't really even matter. But I spent the last couple days at the Red Heart home office making plans for future projects for all of you. So there is some really exciting yarns coming out, some great videos, wonderful patterns, and wonderful pattern support. So I'm just super excited about the next half of the year and everything that we have planned. So hopefully all of you out there with your looms, your hooks, your needles, and maybe just your general maker craftiness are all ready to go with this wonderful wonderful life. Like, I'm so excited. Like, it's one of those things you go and you meet with people that you are inspired by and you are able to collaborate with and just be creative, and you leave there feeling rejuvenated and excited, and it's just great. It's a great feeling. So I feel really good here on a Wednesday morning, and it's perfect for today's guest, who is a brand new guest to the show. I'm going to call her a brand new friend because I've never had a chance to meet her before, but I'm excited to get to know her a little bit better after reading her book and then talking to her this morning. I'm talking about Amy Tangerine, everybody. She wrote the lovely book, Craft the Life You Love. And one thing that I love about Amy is she talks through different advice and things for you. I don't want to spoil it all. I don't want to give the book away, but I love her positive nature and her outlook on life and being happy. Because as you guys know, I try and do the same thing. I try and surround myself with happiness, surround myself with yarn because it makes me happy. Do the things that I really love. And the fact that she is living her life that same way, I feel like we're kindred spirits. And so I'm excited to have her on the show to talk about her book, talk about what she does. And I know that a lot of us out here are not just knitters and crocheters, but we're makers. And so we can really connect and understand each other in a way that I think Amy will be able to express. So hello, Amy. How are you today?
Great, Marley. Thanks for having me.
I'm so thrilled you're here. Honestly, it was kind of the brainchild of having you on the show from my employee. I don't even like calling her my employee, but she is. But Brittany saw your book and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I love this book. I've got to have her. We've got to have her on the show." And I was like, "Well, what book is this?" And then I got it, and then Caitlin got it, and so it's been exciting to have you scheduled. And now that you're finally here, I know that Brittany's kind of going a little fangirl. And I asked her if she wanted to come on the show, and she was like, No, I don't think I can. So
she should have.
Yeah, it's great. So obviously the room you're in right now, let's just take a moment because wow, there's a lot of inspiration and craftiness, and I love the color. Like I love everything that you have going on. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that to start?
Sure. This is my studio. It is based behind my house. When we bought our house in 2013, we got really lucky because it did not show well. And this was one of those shed things that you didn't really know what to do with. And we saw the vision for a place where I could have all of my stuff, and that way my husband did not have to look at my mess on the table and everything, all the projects that I had going on. Right. And it was just a room for me to be able to get creative. So it's a pretty small room, and we have it set up with only furniture that I brought from my old place. And we only bought one thing that was an additional piece here, which is a filing cabinet, an engineer's filing cabinet or architect's. And it's just been such a great space for me to be able to craft in, and it's close to home. Obviously, my commute is very short. I just a walk through the backyard.
Yeah.
And I have it set up now very nicely because I had a shoot here last week. So it's not always this clean, which actually my YouTube audience really appreciates me sharing the fact that, it is often a beautiful mess because it is a working studio. As much as I would love to go into a space that has everything neat and organized and tidy all the time, it's not conducive for the way I create.
I get that. So I don't know if you're like this, but I'll get to a point in my own. So I have a studio. Mine's in my basement. So my entire basement's 1,500 square foot. And so half of it is all built up for the studio, and the other half is kind of storage for all of my studio stuff. But I'll find that when I'm in this creative zone, I'm making the biggest mess. And then there comes a point where I'm like, okay, I've got to stop. And it's like, I'll clean everything up and it's like a refresh. So that way I can recenter myself. And then the minute I sit down and everything's really clean, all of a sudden, all these great ideas and stuff just kind of come in my head. And it's interesting that way.
Yeah, I'm hoping to really stick to my efforts to clean up every night and clear this table behind me, because I think that's where every project lands. And if I'm working on something and I want to continue it the next day, I don't necessarily put it away, but I'm really trying hard. I think that because I'm an only child and because my parents never really taught me to put away my toys, I had grandparents who were very close to us and they helped raise me. So though I was told to put them away, if I didn't, somebody else would do it for me.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds really strange, but now that I have a 4.5-year-old, I'm understanding the value of really teaching it and showing them that to take pride in their toys and putting them away and putting books back where they belong so you can find them. And so I'm learning it at my age.
Girl, I understand. I have 3 kids and they're all teenagers now and I'm still struggling, but now it's not books and toys, it's clothes and shoes. It's like, do you know how much I spent on those shoes? Please pick them up, put them away. So I totally get it. So let's give people a little bit of history about you, because they're like, oh yeah, that room was great. The people are commenting right now that they're like super jealous. They just love your room. So much creativity going on there. But let's back that up a little bit. So you're an only child. Your family, I feel like I know you a little bit more because I read your book, but you're from Chicago, moved to Atlanta, all of this stuff. But was crafting a part of your childhood and then had morphed to where you are now? Tell us your story.
Yeah, it definitely did, because my parents actually immigrated from India. They were both born there. We're Chinese, but they moved here in 1970. And then they took a lot of time to make sure that they saved enough money and were ready to start a family so that they could give me the best life possible. And my dad pumped gas at a gas station. I mean, they had $75 when they arrived in the US in Virginia. And I think that their spirit of being able to make things and out of necessity, right? Because my mom actually was pretty tiny when she moved here and she couldn't find clothes that fit her. So she would have to learn to sew to make her clothes. And so that's what she did. They invested in a sewing machine. It was like a big purchase for them. And she would go to the fabric store and buy only fabrics that were on sale. And she loved taking these materials and creating the clothes. And then after I was born, I think that about the time where I was like 3 or 4, the hobbies that both my parents had really affected me, and I saw the joy that it brought them. So on weekends, we would always work on projects. So whether my dad was building furniture or my mom was, sewing matching mommy and me dresses, I was open to all of those ideas because I saw them happening all the time. And so in grade school, I made friendship bracelets, any craft that was really in at the time, I would get sucked into. So I collected stickers. I don't know if that you can call that a hobby, but
I did that.
Yeah, totally. And like Post-it notes and random things. I would write notes to my friends. And so we would trade these notebooks and we would decorate them with colorful markers and stickers. And we would, go back and forth with them. And it was just a way that I could creatively express myself. And I didn't even know that it was such an essential part of my being because it was just something that I did.
I totally can relate.
And my parents encouraged that. You know, they always wanted me to go make something. Because I was an only child, I found myself bored a lot. So I would always say, you know, I'm so bored. And they would say, go do something, go make something. And if I didn't have a friend coming over, you know, it was just on me to fill that time. So I would actually play Office a lot.
I did too.
Isn't that so ridiculous?
That was the best thing ever. Oh my God, I totally did.
And I would busy myself with paperwork and filing. And I think that it's just one of those crazy things that I think as you grow up, you're sensing the things that you want to do, yet, you know, you see adults doing it and you think, okay, that's what they do. So you're playing along. But what I found was the most happiness that I felt came from using my hands and doing something creative that made me feel good inside.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I'm like you. So I wonder if you and I are the same age. So I was totally friendship bracelets, all about those. When I was like in first and second grade, I used to do finger knitting. And I actually had forgotten that I used to do that. And when I got on Facebook, you know, way long time ago, I connected with a girl that I went to elementary school with. And she had left a comment once and she said, it's so interesting that the girl that used to finger knit at recess is now a knitwear designer. And I was like, oh my God, I did used to do that. Like I forgot that I did that, you know, but I used to make friendship bracelets, scrunchies. Like I would sew scrunchies and I would use puff paint and decorate the scrunchies. And then I was all about the way you could fold a note, like, and then make it really cool bubble letters. I could write bubble letters like nobody's business. So, and scratch and sniff stickers were totally collectibles. So
yes, we definitely grew up in the same era.
Right? Yeah, all of that stuff. But I mean, I love that. I love that your parents encouraged you to go and create something, because all too often most of us I mean, well, I know as a parent, sometimes I'll be like, oh, go watch Dora, like when they were younger, you know, but then I did start making it more of, well, let's make a game. And we would actually make board games, like draw our own board games and create stuff that way. And I always played Office. And so, and then we would, I don't know, I started having fun with my kids on the creative side of stuff. And then they would see me knit all the time. So they wanted to learn to knit. So I had cast on for them just on some circular needles. And I taught them the basics. And so they had their own yarn and their own circular needles, and they never finished it. But it was like, if they wanted to knit with me, they could pick it up and just start knitting. And then they'd put it down, you know, and then maybe like 2 weeks later, Mom, I want to knit with you. And they'd pick it up and start knitting. You know, it was just one of those things. But I love that your parents encouraged you to do that, because it's obvious that has totally influenced the person you are.
Yeah, it really just shows that they were open to different ideas. We would go to the craft store and I would get to choose a project. One of them I remember while you were talking was we tie-dyed t-shirts. And we actually did marbling and we did all these things on the weekends. And, you know, even if it didn't turn out like you expected, it was more about the process.
Yeah.
And really, you know, appreciating the fact that you took the effort to take the time to make it without paying attention too much to the results.
Right.
The scrunchy thing, it was so funny. My mom was like, oh, maybe you could sell these. And I ended up, you know, trying to sell them for like $1, I think. And you know, of course, her friends bought them.
Oh, that's cool.
And it felt so good inside to be able to make something and sell it. You know, I don't even remember exactly the circumstances, but I'm sure she actually bought them.
Right.
My mom did.
But you're an entrepreneur at heart. You know what I did? So I'll share a story. So I used to buy puzzles at garage sales. So they were missing pieces, but the more colorful, the better. And I would hot glue gun puzzle pieces together. And then I would put like, I don't know if they were rhinestones or whatever they were. I decorate with sparkly puff paint and then put an earring back on the back. So I made puzzle earrings and then matching barrettes. Cause you know, we all wore like that pompadour or whatever, you know what I mean? And so we went to a craft fair and my mom made these gorgeous sort of baskets with pine cones and lights and like decoupage, like all this stuff. Right. And I outsold her because everybody wanted the puzzle piece stuff. And I was like, this is awesome. You know, these stupid puzzle piece earrings and barrettes. But I mean, that just, here we are and look at what we're doing now.
That's great.
So I want you to transition. So you did a lot of sewing and fashion stuff. Like I love the story in your book about your best friend and the mermaid dress. Like I was like, oh, I would so have done that. So did you always kind of know you wanted to be in the crafting sort of world, and like where did your path go?
Yeah, well, in high school, because I had finished a lot of my core classes, I had these electives that I could take. So in my senior year, I decided to take sewing. It was actually called clothing, and I learned to sew like boxer shorts, pillowcases, random stuff. And in the spring, I was going shopping for my prom dress, and I found this Nicole Miller dress that I tried on that fit me perfectly, but it was $300. So it was out of my budget. But all I could think about was that dress. So instead, I asked my dad, of course, if he could pay for part of it. And he was like, absolutely not. But, I will take you, to the fabric store. I mean, obviously at that time I could drive, but we can go and you can, maybe make it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, yeah, why not try? So I bought 2 patterns and put them together and, made my dream prom dress. Well, a month out, my substitute teacher's daughter, who is a year younger and dating my really good friend, she needed a prom dress, and she just had this vision for one, and she wanted to know if I could make it. So in the span of like 6 weeks, I made 2 prom dresses, which, for somebody who's in high school and doing everything else too, it was a lot to take on. But there was a little disaster that I go ahead and explain in the book, but it turned out great. So I think that I always knew that I wanted to do fashion, but the only college I got into was actually Georgia Tech. So I applied to Georgia Tech and UGA, and I thought that UGA was my fallback school, but it turned out that I got accepted to Tech, and my dad's an engineer. So he was really proud of me and really, felt a lot of pride for me to go there. And it was local, and I had the Hope Scholarship. So that was a great help financially. And I ended up going there with an industrial design degree in mind. And as I was there for 2 years, I found out that I actually am not that good at industrial design. I would spend, hours in the studio and hours in my dorm room or my apartment working on these projects. And I would come to class the next day for critique, and they would look horrible compared to everybody else's. So it felt very defeating to me to spend a lot of time on things and I was kind of enjoying it. But what I realized is when I got to class, I would talk about how I spent, 8 hours on a project, and somebody next to me with something that looked so good would say, oh, this took me about an hour. So I realized that they had natural talents and inclination to doing that, whereas I had to work really, really hard to earn that B, and nothing I could do would get that A because I couldn't spend more time on it. And I don't think that I had it in me to really extract that sort of talent that I thought was needed. And it could have been just the time of my life too, where I found that a lot of my roommates and friends were asking me to design dresses for them for different occasions. So I decided, after a while that if it was okay with my dad, because he was paying for my college tuition, that I really was struggling. I said, I really want to go to pursue fashion design and marketing. And I think that's where my passion lies. And at the time, he was so supportive. I was really, I think, so nervous inside about it. But looking back, he really wanted me to be happy ultimately. And if going to Georgia Tech meant that I met a lot of my college friends there, and I had this amazing group of people around me, and then I could go off to this smaller, lesser known school called AIU in Atlanta and do fashion design and marketing and have this free time on the side to pursue other passions, then that was the way I should go. And so I transferred and ended up with all this free time. I know that sounds crazy, but you're in this college where, yes, you have to do your work, but it wasn't taking me so long to complete these projects. All of a sudden, I found myself saying, oh, I could take on a part-time job. So I actually decided to work at a modeling agency. I was answering phones for $4.25 an hour. It was minimum wage at the time, a long time ago. And a photographer came in and he saw my style and he would come in regularly. So it was after some time that he said, "Hey, have you ever thought about fashion styling?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't even know what that is." And we got to talking about it, and he said, "Well, let's do a project together. Everybody will work for free. Nobody's going to get paid. And we will come up with this photo shoot idea, and you'll help produce it and style it. And then once we get the film back, we can use it for our portfolios." And so I said, "Oh, that sounds great. I get to go shopping and choose clothes for models to wear. Sure, I'm game." We chose models from Elite. We actually shot it at a restaurant that I was also hostessing at part-time. And it was just this great experience working and collaborating with these creatives and making something happen. And after Elite got the film back that they were using for their models too, they loved it so much that they signed me on as one of their stylists. And so it was just a great opportunity for me to get a head start on what I thought would be a career in fashion, doing styling as opposed to designing.
My dog was barking, so I muted myself. That's why. And I forgot. Thank you for telling me that. I was going to say, for people who might not understand, the stylist is so important when it comes to the whole photo shoot aspect. So much so that I didn't realize it until I started doing professional photo shoots. And I love the stylists I have worked with and the looks that they come up with. It's funny. They'll show me and I'm like, really, that's gonna work. And then they put it together and I'm like, oh my God, I love that piece so much more now, and so they're vital. And so I think that's really awesome. And I'm super jealous of the fact that you went to fashion design and marketing, because I had no idea that this was the avenue I wanted to do in my life. I had no clue. When I went to school, I told you it was a first date, so that's why I tell you my story and you tell me yours, right? I went to school and my parents, they were like, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do?" And I chose speech communication, and my mom lost it. She was like, "Why am I going to pay for you to go to school to learn how to talk? That just doesn't make sense. It's a waste of my money, waste of this, waste of that." She threw a fit. And then 2 weeks went by and she gave me a call and she said, "So I'm okay with your major now." And I said, what happened? What changed? She said, "Well, I found out Matt Lauer was a speech communication major. And so I figured there's something you can do with it." And it just made me laugh. But since then, I mean, obviously my career has, or my degree has helped in my career. But at the time, if I had known that there was a chance to actually take something in fashion and design and marketing, I would have been like you. I would have excelled in such a way that I would have found success that I didn't find when I took math classes, that's just not for me. So I love that you were able to do that. I love, again, that your parents were so supportive of that. I think that is amazing. And I just think it's great. So here you are, you're styling things, you're doing a fun stuff, but you're where do things start to change for you even more? I want you to make sure you tell the story of the arm warmers, because I think that's a great segue right now.
Well, I think that's exactly what happened, right? So I found myself on location at photo shoots, and I would have to pin the clothing on the models to make it look perfect. And I found myself very cold. I mean, I have cold hands. I say cold hands, warm heart. And I asked my mom, this was right after September 11th, and I asked my mom to teach me how to crochet. I just felt like I needed something that just got my mind out of, the craziness of that time. And I asked her to help me learn so that I could make these arm warmers. And I have them here if you guys are watching at home. But they're really simple. And I wanted them to have the fingers free and a hole for the thumb so that they're like sleeves. They're like fingerless gloves. And then that way I could still use my hands, my fingers, to pin the model's clothing. And I wore these into a store opening party in Atlanta. And it turned out that they loved them. And they said, "Where did you get those?" And I said, "I made them." And they said, "Can you make some for the store?" So I said, "Sure." About a week later, I turned in their order, and I had this little bag with me, and I took them out of the bag in the store. And this woman who was shopping there bought them right out of the bag. Wow. And what's crazy is that I had just calculated the time that it took me and the materials and whatever. And I just came up with a wholesale price because I had no idea what I was doing. So I said, okay, so does $37 seem okay for wholesale? And the store owners were like, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So on your face right now. So guess what? They sold for $78 in the store. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? So
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
So it
There's
was
so many like crafters right now are like, what store is this?
I know. It was a denim store. And at the time, they were selling t-shirts that were, my t-shirts, well, we'll get to that, but my t-shirts ended up retailing for like around $70, $80. My
Wow.
tank tops were retailing for $110. So this was a denim store that had high-end denim. The jeans were like $300. I mean, this was like a different time, I think, where it was a high-end boutique, but it wasn't designer. So it's not like it was Gucci, but it was still really something that fit very well. A lot of it was made in the USA. And I think that people I don't know, at that time, people just had that money to spend, I guess.
Yeah.
And so, they were willing to take something that was handmade and they bought it. And it was so crazy because 3 hours after we delivered their order, we got a call and one of the owners said, you're going to think we're crazy, but we've sold out of half of them and we need more. So my mom literally had to stay in Atlanta. She was living in Chicago at the time, but working for the airlines. So she had to stay in Atlanta and help me make another order, another batch for them. And I was just floored. And so Women's Wear Daily ended up doing a story on me. Lucky Magazine did a story. And I got a few more boutiques to pick up the arm warmers. And it was a good little side hustle. I was definitely not making my main income from making these arm warmers, but it felt so great to be able to make something by hand and have people really love it and embrace it and use them. But in the spring, the store said, hey, what are you going to make next? And I was like, I don't know, tank tops. So they were the ribbed tank tops. They were really plain. White rib tank tops, and I hand embroidered these flowers on them. I had this quilt that it was just so gorgeous and it was all hand embroidered. And I took the inspiration from that quilt because I wanted to recreate these colorful flowers on this tank top and ended up wholesaling them for $50. They took about 3 hours to stitch. So I wholesaled them for $50. They retailed for $110.
Oh my gosh.
And Fred Siegel in LA picked them up. And then fast forward a couple months, Cindy Crawford was actually photographed in Glamour magazine working out in one. So she's doing leg lifts in a $110 tank top. And it didn't say Amy Tangerine or anything, but that was enough proof and validation for me to say, hey, you know what? Maybe I have a business here. Let me take it a step further. Do a trade show in New York, invest a lot of money and come up with a collection and see if it sells. Yeah. And one of my goals was just to make enough money to have paid for the trade show. And then that way I could, recover from that and make the goods and ship them out. Well, it turns out I hit my goal on the first day of a 4-day trade show.
I love this story. Keep going. This is great. Something I would do. Like, I love everything.
And I think that I was just very fortunate to have a lot of supportive people around me. I had great mentors who basically took me under their wing. And this one woman, her name's Randa, and she had a line called Notice at the time. And it was just, she was doing private label for Anthropology. And she was doing a lot of stuff, but she's the one who sat me down and she's like, okay, do you realize how many tank tops you need to make how much you want to make as a living in a year? Right. So she did all the calculations for me and I was like, oh, I have to actually expand out of just these hand embroidered tank tops. I have to do other things and expand the collection. Mm-hmm. So we started taking these men's t-shirts that were damages that were selling to me for about $1. And they were already garment dyed. So they're all different colors. They remind me actually of the colors of your yarn back there. So a bunch of different colors that I got to choose from. And I would buy, let's say 200 shirts for $200. And I would take them and cut them apart and piece them together. So they would have this reverse applique technique on the front where the fabric is actually underneath and then the front of the shirt is cut out for words like love and hope. My shirts were always very positive and uplifting. And I think that at that time, that's what we really needed, is something that was just full of hope. And so they were tank tops and t-shirts that were cut from men's silhouettes that were for women. And the trade show did so well that I ended up selling so much stuff. But in January, when it came time to shipping them, I shipped all of January orders, and then February, because I had spent so much time on production, I had found hand sewers locally in Atlanta to help me with them. But it just wasn't enough because I had to make sure that the February orders were also produced. And I only ended up shipping out half of them. And it was just so heartbreaking to me to lose out on that money and to lose out on the trust of those stores who had put their dollars into depending on those pieces to come in to sell.
Right.
And it was a big kind of crisis for me. So at the time, I was in my early 20s at the time. So I really didn't understand and know a lot about it, but I knew that I was disappointed in myself so much that I knew something had to change. So I went through that crisis a little bit and ended up getting offered a job through that company I was buying the t-shirts from, the blank t-shirts. And I was offered this position where I could keep my company and they would handle all the shipping, fulfillment, all that stuff that I did not want to handle, that I couldn't manage. And all I would have to focus on is designing my collection and then also designing a line for them too, which would basically knock off my own line and be silkscreen t-shirts selling at about $18 retail.
Wow. See, that's so cool. I love the path you've taken. And the fact that you're able to share everything you've learned, your experiences and stuff, to be able to relate it to, many of us who are crafting and living our lives and such. But I would say, I mean, to me, that was the takeaway from your book. It was, here's this life I've built, and here are some experiences I've had, and here's how you can really apply them and learn from them in your own life or lives. And like, is that what you would say your book takeaway is? Like, I mean, people are asking, they're like, this is all great. Like, is this in the book? Like, what's happening?
Yeah, so the book is situated so that you have my little tidbits of stories, and then you actually have these practices. So it's a workbook. So you actually have room to fill out and answer questions because you want to be able to deep dive and search for the answers for yourself. Just because you might find my story inspiring, I think that's wonderful, but you also have to take action on your own life. Right. And I think that's what is something that has been ingrained in me because I get inspiration from everywhere. When I hear people's stories, even at that age, I just remembered this has been sunk into my brain for so long. And it was something that I kind of pushed back in my head because it was actually a negative thing. So back to where the arm warmers were, okay? So when I was crocheting these arm warmers and I found success, this is before there were a lot of online stores, but for some reason, somehow, somebody had emailed me through my website, and it was a really mean email. And this is before social media, okay? So this is before somebody could post something anonymously. And, I think that I had never gotten negative feedback before, but somebody had emailed me saying that who am I to use crocheting? I'm such a beginner. Who am I to sell these and think that I could do that and get away with it? And I really took that to heart and said, oh my goodness. And I really questioned, the fact that I was able to do this. And I was like, well, maybe I kind of got imposter syndrome. Like maybe I'm not good enough to do this. And I started questioning that. And I remember going to the store and showing them, I printed out the email and I showed it to them and I was in tears, and they said, oh, Amy, please ignore that. We have no idea, who that person is. They're not in our customer database. Who knows? It could have been somebody who read it in Women's Wear Daily. It could have been somebody who knows. But they took the time to specifically email me and say that I don't deserve that type of success.
Yeah.
And I want everybody listening to know that that is something that, that could have held me back. Guess what? I could have said that one person has just ruined everything for me and I'm no longer going to create anything. I'm not going to, make something just because of what that person said. So anytime you get criticism, I mean, even if you have your own criticism inside your head, you really have to take a step back and listen to where that's coming from and why you're telling yourself that, or why somebody else is telling you that, because it's you can validate it only if you allow that, right? And so the fact that I thankfully got that out of my system early, I think that really showed me that, the world is not made up of all positive people. And whatever she was going through and she felt the need to do, perhaps she was really miserable in her day job, and she, maybe she's been crocheting for 10 years and she thought that I didn't deserve it because she wanted that. Whatever it was, it didn't have to do with me.
Right.
And so that's what I had to separate. But, learning that at, 21 years old is really hard. And I think that at any age, criticism and somebody doubting you or your own self-doubt can really stop you. But I think the message in my book too is that you have to keep going.
Yeah.
You have to do what inspires you and what fills your soul. And you have to just kind of not pay attention to that negative feedback, whether it's in your own head or whether it's coming from an outside source.
Right. One of the things that you wrote in the book that really resonated with me a lot, you were talking about butterflies and things that make you nervous and taking that step, sort of, I'm going to call it out of your comfort zone. And you related the fact that there are things in life that I'm going to mess up the words because I didn't write them down or anything, but it was something in the sense of, if it wasn't important, it wouldn't make you nervous. So if you do the dishes, you aren't nervous. If you're going to go out with a friend that there's like no romantic interest or anything, you don't get nervous. There are things that, they're just easy because they're not as important. Not that not going out with friends is important, but you know what I'm saying? And I like, that just was such a thing. Like, yes, that you put exactly into words the way I feel. Cause I call it going out on the skinny branch. Like, I'm always taking that step out on the skinny branch, which I find comical because my last name is Bird. So the fact that birds are on branches and I'm on that skinny branch, really praying to God that it holds up, because, so it's like a whole bunch of like little kind of self things there. And I'm like, I'm not a small girl, so it's really going to hold up, all these little things. So I often will tell myself, all right, let's take this leap. Let's go out on this skinny branch and let's see if this sticks. And sometimes it breaks and I fall really hard. And sometimes it holds, and then all of a sudden it grows and it's strong and there's more branches that come from it. And so when I was reading that, I was like, yes, that's exactly what it is. It's just, don't have that fear. Just do it, because there's a reason you're nervous. There's a reason it's because it's important.
Absolutely. No, I love that analogy, and I'm totally going to use that because I totally completely visualize that whole thing.
Right?
I think it's about really, trusting yourself and taking that leap of faith, because if it doesn't make you nervous inside, I met my husband on a blind date through a friend. The friend knew both of us, and it was my first blind date. I had never gone on one before. And now, almost 10 years later, we're married. And I think that if I had not taken that chance, where would I be? And that goes for everything. And it could be little things. It could just be, hey, you know what? I'm going to try a new bold lipstick today and see how I feel.
Which is a big deal. Like, I put a red lipstick on once and I was like, man, but I'm like, oh, it looks good. Yeah, I totally hear you.
Yeah. Can I pull this off? Oh, I don't know. What are people going to think? Well, just see how you feel. I think that's my gauge with everything too. Is like, how do I want to feel about this? Obviously I don't want to feel negative feelings for too long. So how can I get over that and say, you know what, I'm just going to take this chance and see what happens. What's the worst that could happen? Really?
Yeah. They could say no, like, or like everything. Yeah. It's good. It's so good. You talk a lot about journaling in the book, and you do a lot of scrapbooking, and which I'm in awe of some of the work that you do. It's amazing. It's so beautiful. I have other scrapbooking friends that are so incredibly talented, and I'm just like, I look at it, I'm like, wow, I would love to do that because it just looks so cool. Where was I going with this? Oh, journaling. So you recommend people journal every day and write. Do you hold true to that? Do you do that every day?
I do. I only spend 10 minutes on it every day, and it's more of a brain dump, and I do it in the morning. Sometimes I'll do it in the evenings if I didn't get a chance to, but I find that, you know how people talk about meditation these days?
Uh-huh.
I think that that's a meditative process for me, is just to get all the stuff that's in my head out onto paper. And it could be anything. It could be big dreams. It could be just something that I'm ruminating on that just needs to be released so that I can be my best self.
Yeah.
And I think that there's such validation to and power when you put pen to paper. I mean, you'll laugh, but I can go back to things that I wrote down 10 years ago of the goals that I wanted to accomplish. And I swear half of them are definitely accomplished
Yep.
already.
Yep.
More than half. And it's not very sometimes I think that it's really important to get specific. And sometimes I think it's more of, how do I want my life to feel? How do I want to feel when I wake up in the morning? Okay. Do I want to feel anxious? When I had the t-shirt company, everything was going great until about 2007. I noticed that there was a shift in the economy, and stores all of a sudden who were paying their bills on time weren't. And I would wake up in the morning, because I had already paid my 12 hand sewers and the people who worked with me. I would wake up in the morning like, oh my goodness, so-and-so owes me $1,000. I'm owed, $2,000 from this store, and and this check bounced. And those are the feelings that I didn't want to feel anymore. And I know it sounds like that I could have done a lot of different things probably to get that feeling away. But I got to a point where I was just a little bit burnt out, and I realized that I needed to just take a breather and take time for myself and just say, you know what? I want to make stuff, but I don't want anybody to have to buy it. I don't want to sell it in any way. I don't want somebody to say, why don't you make this size, and why don't you make it in pink and blue and all these colors? And I just wanted to make freely what I wanted to make. So we focused on the 20% of our stores that were bringing 80% of our business, and we weren't doing trade shows anymore. We found that we would go to these trade shows and we would spend, let's say, $5,000-$10,000 to get there. And sometimes we would barely get $20,000 worth of orders.
Yep.
And that's not good. Okay.
No.
So that is not enough to sustain a business. And because I had people who were depending on me and my ideas, I had to be my best self. So taking the time to journal at that time really gave me this release and sense of, hey, you know what? These things are important to me. Having people depend on me is important, but I can't have this other stuff. And I can't afford to, hire somebody to take care of the money side of things, because the money side of things has to matter to me.
Mm-hmm.
I heard so many horror stories about people getting bought out and then going bankrupt, and all of a sudden it's like, I just didn't want that for myself. And I knew that it was something that was very powerful from a young age, just keeping a journal, keeping a diary, that I went back to that. And so I just encourage people 10 minutes a day. That's it.
That's cool. It's funny because before I came into what I do now, I was in insurance and investments. And one of these big conferences we went to, somebody, in order for us to foresee the success we wanted, we had to do it wasn't a mood board, it was like a vision board sort of thing. So I put one together, and then, I left that business 5 years later, started this, and I recently found it. And I looked at it and I was like, oh my gosh, I've gotten all of this, but it wasn't in the career that I originally planned it for. It was in the one I'm in now. And I found that really interesting, that it was like, this is what I want, but it didn't mean that I had to do it in what I thought my life was going in at that time, but I got it. I found success. I found happiness where I am now. And I thought it was fun to go back and see that, and have something to reflect on. And I completely agree with you about there's power in putting pen to paper, because I will put goals on paper all the time. And as I check one off, I'll write another one. And I put a goal that's beyond my skinny branch, right? Like, it's always like, oh, there's one. I don't know how I'm going to get that. And I keep getting them. And I'm not bragging. I'm going to knock on wood, but I'm just like, okay, what's next? And so I'm just like, well, let's put something even bigger on there. And my husband will look at it and he's like, really? Like, you really think? And I'm like, who knows? I have no idea. Maybe someday. But it's
Absolutely.
important.
Yeah. The universe wants to, whatever you believe in, okay? It could be anything, but the universe really wants to grant you your truest wishes. They
Yes.
really, and I think that the power of the collective consciousness that's going on now, where if we don't inside of us explore what makes us happiest, we as a community and as a society cannot feel that way,
Right.
right? It starts with the individual. So I think it's so important to put those vision boards together. It may feel hokey. It may feel silly to say, I want to be a millionaire one day. But guess what? Like that's okay. That's
What
perfectly
happened?
valid. Why would you think that somebody who made $4.25 an hour working at McDonald's, that was my first job, by the way,
Uh-huh.
would be in a position where I'm not like living my dream,
Yeah.
right now.
Yep.
I find that the universe wants to give you the things that you want
Yep.
and your truest wishes.
I love it. I love this. So what, I know that we're going to take the full hour for sure. What made you decide you wanted to put all of this together in a book form? And can I just tell you that I started this whole podcast off saying I felt like we were kindred spirits. Like you have an outlook on life that's very similar to mine. Like I love it. It's really fantastic. And I love that you've put it in a book form and related it to craft and success and everything that you've done. How did that all come to be?
Okay, so I really have wanted to share this story, and I share it when I do in-person classes. So I travel to teach scrapbooking classes all over the world, and I'm able to, at those places, share some of these tidbits and these experiences that I've been through. And people are always so, it just resonates so much with them, but I can't get everywhere. And I think that with social media, on my YouTube channel, it'd be great to have a video where I talk about it, but I think that it passes too quickly, whereas a book is in tangible form and it can be accessed and referenced. Plus, I wanted to make sure that people would actually do the exercises and practices. So there are a lot of people, a lot of scrapbookers who don't want to actually write in my book. I have a lot of people saying, I don't want to write in your book, it's too pretty. So fine, just do it in a separate notebook. I think that it's really important to just be able to have this story that inspires you in different ways and go through the practices in whatever speed you want. But I really wanted, instead of a blog post that, people might read and reference, I wanted it to be longer lasting than that. And I realized that a couple of my friends had self-published books before. And so I talked to them, and one of them introduced me to his editor. And so when I was talking to her, I said, I've written bits and pieces here and I just don't know what to do. And, there's obviously I have my full-time job too. When am I going to find the time to write this? And she said, well, you're never going to write a book until you write a bad first draft.
Yeah.
And after you write that bad first draft, just hand it over to me. And I was like, what? And that was such a freeing thing to hear, because I didn't have to make sure every single sentence was perfect. I didn't have to make sure. I could just do a brain dump and essentially just tell my story so that she could figure out how to put it into chapters and make it so that, what people needed to get out of it was what they could get out of it, because I have the questions, but I didn't know how to format it in a way that would actually be something that more people would want to buy.
I love it. I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. I love that Brittany found it and was like, we gotta do this. And like I said, I think it's amazing that our circles have been in the same areas. We've never crossed paths. But now we will. Now, whenever we're at AFCI or whatever they're calling it these days, or whatever, yeah, we'll be like, let's just go get a drink at the bar and kind of see what's going on. I think it'll be cool. So I've had such a great time with this conversation. It's not over, but I do want to let people know. Let me click over here, see if I can get my mouse to work for me. If you are listening live to this broadcast, like where you're literally watching live right now, you have a chance to win a copy of this book. Amy and her publisher are blessed. We're blessed enough that they're giving away a copy of the book to somebody who's watching the show live right now. And all you need to do is smash that like button on this video. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. And in the chat, make sure you leave a comment that says, I want to win. We'll select a winner here in just a couple minutes. So just make sure you write down, I want to win. That's all you have to do. Once we select the winner, I'll tell you where to send your information as far as address and phone number, and it'll be that easy. But we're blessed also on the podcast that she is giving away another copy of the book to somebody who leaves a comment on the blog. So if this is the first time you've watched the Yarn Thing podcast with Marley Bird, welcome. We are glad you are here. And we always try and give away prizes. And there's always a chance to get two prizes, or not two prizes, but two chances to win. One is when you're watching live, you have a chance to win live. And the second is after the show, you could go over to the show notes where you'll find links to everything that Amy has provided to us, maybe some pictures, whatever it may be, whatever you think you might have missed from the show can be found in the show notes at marleybird.com. So that's important, marleybird.com. You go there, go to podcast, you'll see where it says show notes, and you'll find the show notes for today's show to get all that information. At the bottom of that post, you'll see where it says leave a reply or leave a comment. And you are literally going to leave a reply or comment that includes a keyword that Amy will give us here in a minute. That's sort of like your golden ticket. That's your proof that you have watched the whole video, you've used the keyword, and you're entering for a chance to win a copy of her book. We choose a winner about 6 to 8 weeks after the original air date of this podcast for two reasons. One, we know that your lives are busy and you might not be able to watch this show as soon as it airs. Maybe you're catching it 2, 3, 4, 6 weeks later. We still want you to have a chance to win. The second is because my life is just as crazy. And so sometimes I don't get to do a show every Tuesday and I have to skip a Tuesday here or there due to my travel schedule. So it just gives us time for you guys to enter and for me to get another show up in time. So, for example, here, let's give away a prize from a previous podcast. We had the lovely Sarah Delaney, who is a wonderful crochet designer, on the podcast back in January. So see, this is a long time ago. She was on in January, and we were talking about her book, How to Crochet, Design Your Own Crochet Patterns. And it's a wonderful book, and her keyword was math, because she loves math, right? So the comment on the show notes was, you two ladies are one of a kind, wonderful people and great teachers. Keep up the good work. Who thought math would become so helpful in crochet? I am glad I paid attention and did not do so bad. Thank you for all you do. And that's from Bertha Murillo. So Bertha Murillo did her due diligence, went to the show notes on marleybird.com, found the show notes for Sarah Delaney's podcast, left her comment with the keyword, and look, now she's a lucky winner of a copy of that book. So that's how easy it is, you guys. So let's reiterate one more time. I feel like there should be a drinking game for every time I say marleybird.com. Okay. So you're going to go to marleybird.com, click on the drop down menu for podcast, go to show notes, find the show notes for today's show, go to where it says leave a comment, leave your comment with the keyword that Amy will give us here in just a second. And that enters you for a chance to win a copy of her book. We love your comments here on YouTube. Seriously, leave a comment. I would love to have a comment. The positive ones are even better. But in order for a chance to win a book, you have to leave your comment on the show notes. So Amy, all of that is to say, what is the key word they should use?
Let's use kindness.
Kindness. That's a great keyword. Kindness. I'm writing it in my notes so that way we can make sure we check for that. Kindness is your keyword, everybody. So make sure you use that in your comments on the show notes. Okay. So there's that. All right, Amy, we have so many people that want to win this book. I mean, like my entire feed is just, I want to win. I want to win. I want to win. I want to win. It's kind of crazy. And people, they're loving this. They're so grateful that you're on the show. Melody, for instance, has said that she is really enjoying watching the show and the guest, and says it's just amazing. And this book is a must have. So, I mean, there's just really great stuff happening. All right. So I am going to ask Brittany right now. Brittany, go ahead and select a winner and let me know. And so that way, oh, she already had one selected. All right. So you guys ready? I feel like I should have a drum roll. All right. I think it's Aggie Timmons. Aggie Timmons, you're the lucky live listener. You win a copy of this book. Let me see if I can link to Aggie. I don't know if Aggie is a boy or girl, but Aggie, you're the winner. So Aggie, all I need you to do is send me an email, winner@yarnthingpodcast.com. Winner@yarnthingpodcast.com. Include your mailing address and phone number. Is there anything else that they need to include with that, Amy?
Nope, I think that's it.
All right, cool. So it's really that simple, you guys. And if you wanted to win, if you're one of the many people who left a comment, you want a chance to win, don't forget, go to marleybird.com and the show notes and leave your keyword kindness when you leave your comment, and you'll have a chance to win too. Other than that, you could always just go out and buy the book yourself. I know it's available on Amazon. I know it's available on audible.com. And do you sell it on your own website, Amy?
I don't, but it's
Okay.
at Barnes& and Noble. It's at, a
Yeah,
lot of
it's
places.
everywhere. So you can go, you can find this book, you guys, and I highly recommend it. I think it's a wonderful, uplifting, inspiring book, and a chance for you to even just take things that you might know intuitively, and it just puts it out there. Like she expresses it in such a way that you'd be like, yes, that's it. That's what it is. I know I had those moments completely. So Amy, this has been so wonderful having you on the show. It's truly a delight, and it must be different for you. Like, we really didn't talk too much about scrapbooking, but just crafting in general. And I think that that's the cool part, is we can all relate to one another in such that way. And I would be remiss if I did not ask you about your earrings, because everybody has asked me to ask you about the earrings.
So these were actually made for me. I launched my book, Craft a Life You Love, at Pinterest headquarters in San Francisco. And one of my guests brought them and she made them. And
That
I
is so cool.
can't remember her handle, but when I do, I'll let you know. I think she sells them. Aren't they so
Super
cute?
I love those. Those are so great. Those are so great. So I love it. I love it so much. But so much fun. This is so great. And I really do hope I get to meet you someday, someday in the wild.
Same
We'll have to make
here.
sure that we connect.
Would love it.
Awesome. Well, you have a wonderful day. And I'm going to say thanks to everybody else for watching today's show. Don't forget to go check out the show notes. I'll put a link in the video description box right below. You have a lot of time to leave your comment, but why not just do it now? Just get it done. And I think that's it. Make sure you hit subscribe, you guys. Check out Amy's YouTube channel. It is amazing. I've subscribed this morning. I know many of you here in the chat have already subscribed. I put a link up there earlier. We'll be sure to include that in the show notes as well, so you guys can check her out. She is fun, inspirational, motivating, and just a good person to follow. And if you follow me, you'll like her too. So you should totally do it. Other than that, let's say thanks to our sponsors one last time. Thank you to Craftsy, Creative Bug, Erin Lane Bags, Stitches.com or Stitches.events, Buffalo Wool Company, and last but certainly not least, Red Heart Yarns, where I'm the proud national spokesperson and home of Chic Sheep Yarn by Marley Bird. Thanks, guys, and I'll catch you guys soon. Bye.